Hello, YouTube and Foxhole. My name's Christy. I am from Flip City, and thank you for joining me on my second Creative Chaos stream where we interview fascinating people making fantastic things outside the mainstream. And tonight we have the fantastic and wonderful Mike Barron, and he is currently funding a graphic novel called Florida Man that he guarantees that you will laugh. So I'm going to bring Mike in and say hello. Let's see. There you are. Hi, Mike.
Hi,
How's it going?
it's going good.
Awesome. So I was checking out your website at baroncomics.com where you have links to all of your crowdfunding sites, and it looks like you have funded your book.
Well, yeah, it's a. I think that we shouldn't have launched this late in the year because everybody's tight for Christmas. But we're going to be going for another couple of weeks, and then eventually the book will be split into three floppies and distributed by American Mythology, which is a comic book publisher.
Okay, awesome. Is that a publisher that you've worked with before?
Yes, they did the first Florida Man graphic novel, and it instantly became their best-selling title.
Oh, very nice. I bet that felt good for both of you. Awesome. Well, I wanted to start off the stream mostly with showing your trailer for Florida Man, the main trailer. It looks like you have maybe like a stinger trailer too that I
Well,
think we'll just.
our friend Kelsey Shannon, who colored the cover, by the way, he's a brilliant artist, and I'm working with him on a couple of other projects. He did a trailer all on his own and sprung it on us, and it's really funny. I'll find that, I'll dig that up too and put it in the feed. But the main trailer is done by Chris Brawley, who runs all my campaigns, and Chris is a professional videographer, and he puts out the best trailers of anybody in crowdfunding comics.
Oh, so you are very blessed to kind of have a team helping you out with this then.
Absolutely.
Oh, I bet that takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, it does. And he's also my life coach. He may show up on a feed here and he'll say, sit up straighter, smile more, look into the camera.
So a life coach too. I've got one of those that I found. He found our magazine, loved what we were doing, and he gives me tons of advice on how to stream better, how to write better copy, all that kind of good stuff. I bet you don't need any help writing copy though, because you're a writer.
Well, I don't write copy. I just write fiction. Is all I want to. And I write essays too. I have a Substack column, MikeBarronSubstack.com. But when you say copy, I think of advertising because I have some friends who worked in advertising.
Yeah, that's kind of because we're such a small publication, we pretty much wear all the hats possible. So, we're graphic designers and writers, and my job is to sell the magazine. I never knew I'd be a magazine salesperson. So it's been a learning curve and somewhat enjoyable, but I've learned how to advertise ourselves a little bit better. But
Great.
we kind of take the shit out of ourselves all the time, so it's fun to make fun of what we do. All right, let's take a look at your trailer. And mouse click.
No sound.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I'm going to pause this. Considering I'm working with a broken mouse, we're not doing too bad. Oops. Hold on. Now, did you make your own trailer, or did I'm sorry, we just discussed that. I really like that intro as well. I'm going to stop presenting and then present again and see what
Okay.
happens here. All right. Oh, hold on. Wrong one. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, everybody out there. All right. All right.
That's it.
Are you hearing that?
Yep.
There is a creature in the swamps who has survived thousands of years of evolution. It lives to destroy. A mindless, eating machine. The beast they call Hogzilla.
After his latest get-rich scheme goes sideways, Gary Duba, the quintessential Florida man, ends up with a stash of somebody's high-end memorabilia. His gal Crystal is on probation and preparing for the fight of her life, squaring off against Australia's Queen of Combat. Delilah's got her back in training, staying off rich foods and the nose candy. Meanwhile, Gary and his best friend Floyd have been hired to wrangle a massive, abnormally aggressive feral hog that's terrorizing the swamp and wrecking Gary's old neighborhood. Can they bag the elusive monster swine without destroying the Sunshine State? Reserve your copy of Florida Man vs. Hogzilla at FloridaManComics.com. We're bringing back funny books, y'all.
Awesome. I just love the we're bringing back funny books, y'all.
Yeah, Chris did that.
No, that was his tagline.
Oh yeah, Chris wrote he wrote the video, and he lined up the voice actors.
Oh, nice, because that was the other thing I was going to ask was who was doing the voice on that.
Oh, he's a professional videographer, so he's got a whole crew he relies on. He's very busy shooting videos all over the country most of the time, but he's a big comic fan. And so I'm real happy that we've joined forces because he really knows what he's doing.
Right. Well, you're a lucky guy to have, Chris, because yeah, that tagline cracked me up the first time I heard it. And of course, since we spoke on Facebook, I've looked at a lot more of what you're doing and watched that trailer a couple of different times, and it still cracks me up. So, where did the inspiration for writing Florida Man come from? Why'd you choose Florida?
I always say I don't choose my stories; they choose me. Every time I went online, I saw another Florida Man headline. And the one that I think of first is Florida Man claims syringe found in rectum is not his. And that's typical of so many of them. But my Florida Man is not borderline sleazy or pornographic. He gets himself into some pretty awkward situations. But if you're going to write about an unappealing loser, people aren't going to follow along because in order for people to enjoy the story, they want to identify with somebody and they want to root for him. So Gary's just a redneck living in a trailer down by the swamp. He's got a hair-triggered temper. He likes to get stoned. He likes to get high. He's been in and out of trouble with the law his whole life, but he's got a heart of gold, and he'd give you the shirt off his back. And that's the redeeming feature. And every story follows the same pattern. Gary is always looking for the next get-rich-quick scheme. He goes from rags to riches to rags to riches to rags to riches. And that's true of the new book first, which begins with him agreeing to smuggle in 100 red-kneed tarantulas from Mexico. It's over with his smuggler, and Gary says, well, how am I going to do that? He says, you're going to fly down to Mexico City and pick them up. And he says, what if they get loose? And the guy who's hiring him says, no, you'll meet my agent. She'll give you a sealed suitcase. You check it through. There's no way the tarantulas can get out.
And then shenanigans and hilarity ensues.
Hopefully. And that's just the start. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces in all these Florida Man stories. because he's always looking for the next get rich quick scheme, and they come and go real fast, but they all pull together in the end. There's a lot more to it than that,
Oh, I'm
obviously,
sure.
because there's the Hogzilla angle too, but there's a lot more to it than that. His girl Crystal's got a wrestling match coming up.
Right. Yeah. We see that in the trailer, and I thought read something on just in the description of the graphic novel that he spent or lost all his money that he won in the lottery.
Well, in the first book, he wins the lottery, wins $6 million. He spends $5 million on a mansion and $1 million on hookers, blow, music, and cars.
Right.
And he's having a big party at his house, and they're all out of control. They're shooting off guns. So the police show up. And he says, you got to shut this down, pal. You got to shut this down. You're causing a disturbance, so we could arrest you. And Gary gets so mad, he shoves the police officer, and the police officer throws him to the ground. And Crystal sees this from the house, and she comes leaping out, waving a 3-foot-long black dildo, and starts whacking cops with it. Her friend videos it and puts it up on the internet, and it gets 3 million views. And that's how she becomes a professional wrestler, as she is instantly dubbed the Black Dildo. But of course, they can't use that name on the marquee. So they call her Steely Danielle. And if you know where Steely Dan comes from, it's a clever play on words, and it gets the job done. But every time they introduce her in the ring and the announcer says, and now, Steely Danielle, the whole crowd, the whole arena starts chanting, Black Dildo, Black Dildo.
So they are on the inside track because they saw the viral video.
Right. Right. And what was she doing with that? Well, a girlfriend of hers gave it to her as a wedding gift, as a gag gift.
And I'm sure she's never used it.
No, she doesn't need it. But anyhow, when that happens, when she attacks the police, they throw them both in jail, which is like the 9th or 10th time for both of them. But fortunately, he's got a good lawyer, Habib Rodriguez, who gets him out. And he figures prominently in the story, too.
All right. So Gary has a good friend, Habib Rodriguez.
That's right.
All right. Very nice. Now, I did want to take a look at your campaign, and I was kind of interested because you have a little tracker on baroncomics.com to show how your campaign's going. Is that like a widget that tracks all your campaigns, or do you have to update that?
I don't know. Chris set that up.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because let me see. There it is. All right. So you are wrapping up your campaign pretty quick here, just a few days after the new year. And you've already reached your goal. So congratulations on that.
We'd love to reach that next stretch goal because
Right.
that'll unlock some more features. And if you look at the campaign there, okay, right there, cover B, that's Crystal in front of her nickname, which is deliberately blocked out.
Oh, I see. Now, now I get it. Because I think you had mentioned, like, if you know, somewhere on social media or something like that.
Well, it helps to have read the first book. And when you read that first book, you'll laugh out loud. You'll laugh out loud if you read this one, too. I guarantee it. Because the humor is honestly funny. It's not jokes. It's not puns. It's the highest form of humor, which arises from absurdity and the juxtaposition of the sacred and the profane. And that's where the big belly laughs come from.
Right. Okay. So that's Crystal. And so over here on the cover A, I'm assuming that's Gary.
That is Gary. That's right.
Now, do you have any certain inspiration for that character in particular, or just like a combination of all those kind of Florida man headlines that your inspiration came from?
Well, he's kind of like a generic redneck who grew up in the swamp. You look at these Florida man stories, and they're often mug shots of the people involved, and the mug shots are not very favorable. The people they show, but but Gary does share certain traits with him. He's a redneck. He's got that mustache. He's got a lot of tattoos, but generally he's not looking sullen or drug addled. Although he got a lot of drugs, and he
He
does
does
it in
look
this.
rather happy, actually.
Yeah, well, he's got a he's got a sunny outlook on life. Unlike so many of these Florida man people that get in trouble, he's an optimist.
Right. Now, and just kind of reading through, because I also went over and checked out your Amazon Florida Man and how you're doing over there. And it seems like you've picked up a lot of people that are big fans of your series.
Yeah, people love it. I've had review after review that say I had to pull over to the side of the road. I was laughing so hard I couldn't see because they had it on audio. And other people say my wife told me to go sleep in the living room because I was laughing so hard I was keeping her up. And I have hundreds of reviews like that. It is a very funny novel. And it surprised me too, because I never set out to write humor. But as I said, uh, I was getting hammered with these Florida man stories day after day until finally I said, well, I got to write a novel about this guy.
Well, and that brings me to another question I had was you seem to be just prolific across all genres or a lot of different genres in your writing because you do science fiction, you have comedy here, you've done comic books, you wrote was it Deadpool?
I wrote Dead Man
Oh,
for
Dead Man.
DC uh,
Okay.
and The Punisher for 5 years, and Flash and Star Wars and many other titles. But mostly the two characters I created, Nexus with artist Steve Rude, and The Badger, which are still being published today. And I created those in the 80s. Nexus is probably the most honored and longest lasting independent superhero comic in history.
And is that what you prefer to write or what brings you the most joy to write superheroes?
No,
Or
it really it's not the genre, although I love them all. The greatest joy I have as a writer is when I write something and I know that it works. I know that I've nailed it. Uh, and my methods have changed over the years. I now outline extensively, but I work on these projects to make the story resonate. My first rule is it has to entertain. Every part of it has to entertain. If it's a comic, I don't want to waste a single word or a single picture. It has to advance the story. And I learned how to do that when I started out writing because I would write my comics by drawing each page out by hand. I did that for 20 years. I'm not a great artist. I'm good enough so that people can see what I want. And it taught me so many invaluable lessons, the most important of which is what happens next. Because I would proceed panel to panel, making the story up as I went along. And I have the structure in my head, the overall structure. A work of fiction is a dynamic narrative with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the hero has to experience peaks and valleys because if everything was smooth, you got a guy that's completely satisfied with his life, there's no trouble, he goes to work every day, nothing upsets his equilibrium. That's really not much of a story, especially not the type of story I write, because I am drawn to action, intrigue, and suspense. And I love noir. My biker series are all about noir, but the Florida Man series are all about making you laugh. So you can chart it like going, that's what's happening there. He's up, he's down, he's up, he's down. And all fiction, at least the type of fiction that I like and my friends like, is based on tension and release. Tension and release. So the tension builds, and then there's a release, and then the tension builds again. Anybody who reads a modern crime novelist or detective novelist like Jack Reacher knows what I'm talking about and how each chapter ends neatly, sometimes with a cliffhanger, sometimes just with an air of finality, but then you go on to the next chapter. What happens next is the most important question in fiction because the reader has to care before he'll turn the page. Well, how do you make the reader care? There are an infinite number of ways, but I'm just going to name the top three. Number one is you create a fascinating character. And I always look at Sherlock Holmes. I think he's probably uh, the most widely known fictional character in history. And he's more successful now than he ever was. Arthur Conan Doyle just created a brilliant idea, a brilliant sensation. Number two is you create an intriguing situation that's irresistible to a certain type of fan. And the best example of that is Jurassic Park. What if we cloned dinosaurs and made theme parks out of them? What could go wrong? And a third way to do it is with a seductive narrative voice. So this is harder to do in comics, but you can do it. And people will, once they get used to your rhythms and they like them and they know that they're going to get a great story, they recognize that the mixture of pictures and words working together is a seductive narrative voice. It's much easier to do in fiction when you think of somebody like Raymond Chandler, the great detective novelist who created Philip Marlowe and kind of set the template for the anti-hero. He wrote vividly in a way that people never had before. One phrase comes to mind. He was about as inconspicuous as a tarantula on angel food. I always think of that. And that's a Raymond Chandler quote. And you all know Raymond Chandler. He created Philip Marlowe, The Big Sleep, many other novels. When you think of also another seductive narrative voice is Michael Chabon, who wrote The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. And if you've ever read Michael Chabon, you know what I'm talking about. He's the opposite of terse. You're going to read, you're going to learn new words on virtually every page. He wrote a novel called Telegraph Avenue about a record store in Berkeley. And there's one chapter that's 5,000 words long. It's about a parrot that escapes from its cage, and it's a single sentence. It never flags.
Well, now seems to me that you've been writing for quite a few years. When did you discover that this was something that you took joy in doing?
Well, when I was going to college, I had a friend who ran an underground newspaper. I went over there one day and there were hundreds of new LPs lined up against the wall, everybody I wanted to listen to. And I said, Mark, where do you get these records? And he says, the record company sent them to me. You want some? Take them. Just write something about them. So I figured, well, I get free records if I write about them. So I started writing then. And after I got out of college, I moved to Boston because I heard there were a lot of opportunities for writers, and I was right. But the first job I got was smoking dope for the government. I answered an ad in the back of the Boston Phoenix looking for volunteers to live on a hospital ward for a month, smoke government-grown marijuana every day, and take a battery of tests. It was just like college. And when I got out, I wrote that up, and I sold the story to the Boston Phoenix. And a couple of months later, they hired me as their music editor. And it was my job to go out night after night, listen to the bands, talk to the musicians. And I loved it. And the record companies were riding high at that time. They had more money than they knew what to do with. One day, they delivered 72 albums to my front door, which was a basement apartment in Brighton. And, I'm still writing about music. I don't get paid for it now. I just do it for the free records, but I love it so much that I do. But fiction was always my goal. I always wanted to write fiction. I always wanted to write novels. But I stumbled into comics. Well, not really. I mean, I loved comics too, and I was trying to do them. And I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time in Madison, Wisconsin, when I had hooked up with Steve Rude. And he showed me his portfolio, and I realized this guy's a genius. And some friends of ours decided to start their own comic company. It was Capital City Distribution, the second largest comic book distributor in the world at the time, a multi-million-dollar corporation. And they said they wanted a superhero. So I went home, and I brainstormed the first 12 pages of Nexus, which I drew out by hand on a legal pad with a pen. Including all the spaceships and the bad guys and everything. And I gave it to Steve. He penciled it, inked it, and lettered it. And we showed it to the boys, and they said, hell yeah, now we need 20 more pages. And that's how we started Nexus. Later, Nexus went to First Comics, and after that, it went to Dark Horse Comics. And I'm still publishing some Nexus through Dark Horse, but mostly I'm publishing it myself with Chris. And the new book is illustrated by Kelsey Shannon. And Kelsey is the colorist on the cover of that issue of Florida Man that you're looking at with Gary standing in the back of the pickup truck. He's a brilliant artist in his own right. In fact, unknown to us, he did a Florida Man trailer, which is 30 seconds long. And I just sent it to you on Facebook. If you want to take a look at it, it's in your message feed.
All right. We'll see if I can get into my Facebook. I'm really bad at speaking and multitasking, but yeah, and so that was not this other one.
No, it's completely different.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, good. Of course, they're wanting me to double log in here.
I couldn't
on my
do it.
Facebook.
You know, if you can't do it,
you know, we have in here a private chat if you want to drop the link in there.
Okay.
On the StreamYard, and then I can just click that open real easy. We can take a look at that, but we'll scroll through for the time being. We'll scroll through your campaign a little bit. So the best way for people to support you, the easiest way would probably be to go to baroncomics.com.
That's right.
They can see your whole campaign here and then choose which platform they want to back your campaign on. Me personally, because they don't censor, I would say go back the campaign on fundmycomic.com.
We're all very happy with Fund My Comic. And also, if you go up to Mike's Books and click that on, you can order any of my books that we've been doing for the past couple of years, including The First Florida Man, Thin Blue Line, Private American, and Bronze Star.
Yeah, and that was something when I was clicking around your site today, I did want to go through with you, is checking out your past published novels and things like that. But let's watch this Florida Man. I'm going to skip the ad first before I even share. Okay, one sec. All right. You know, something also that I enjoyed while looking around the stuff that you put out there on the interzones is that you give a lot of tips on your YouTube channel for writing, and you always seem to have a dog half in your lap.
That's true.
Is that just when you sit down, that's what he does every time?
Yes.
Oh, I love that. I've got one like that. And you call him your acting coach.
Freddie,
your acting coach. So anybody that wants really great writing tips, go check out Mike's YouTube channel as well.
Mike Bear on YouTube.
Okay, this was the 30-second teaser that we're looking at. Okay, here we go. No, YouTube, I will never give you money.
Grab your copy of Florida Man vs. Hogzilla. Available now at floridamancomics.com. We're bringing back funny books, y'all.
I'm going to replay that one full screen.
Okay. It's short.
It is.
Grab your copy of Florida Man vs. Hogzilla. Available now at floridamancomics.com. We're bringing back funny books, y'all.
Also, something that I noticed was you have so many different URLs leading back to your work.
Yeah. all roads lead to Rome.
Oh, that's a funny old Bill Cosby that we landed
Yeah.
on.
Not so funny anymore.
No, not so. Not since his Me Too being outed. You know, now I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, so I always, because I know Hollywood is disgusting in every right, and I just feel like when somebody gets Me Too'd publicly and gets in as much trouble as Bill Cosby, my mind goes straight to what did he do wrong? Who did he piss off?
That's a reasonable thought.
Yeah, I think so. Oh gosh, who's in fact our cover for our latest Flip City kind of goes along with that. I'm just going to show this real quick because it kind of has been the year of the smear. So we've got Louis.
How can people get your magazine?
Go to flipcitymag.com and there's several things you can do. You can click the button that says read for free, check us out, and see if we're as funny as we say we are. And if you like it, come back and subscribe, or you can just click the buy subscribe button. They're both animated, so you do not. The two most important things you can do is, get the free magazine, check it out, and then buy and subscribe.
So you send out a paper magazine?
We do, and we publish it quarterly.
Great.
Yeah, it's we actually just closed out our 4th year. It has been a white knuckle adventure, and we've learned a lot throughout the entire process. We're just small publishers publishing from our house up in the mountains, but we've made it this far, and we're hoping to thrive in year 5. That's what we keep saying.
I love physical media. I will subscribe. I urge my friends to subscribe too. One of the worst things about the rise of the internet is the disappearance of magazines.
Thank you for saying that. We didn't know if we were going to do a print publication or not, but we got really lucky when we first launched and found a YouTuber that was just at the start of his rise to YouTube fame. And he was super excited to get us as his first sponsors. And so we put out there, we were selling a digital and we were selling print, and 99% of people chose the print. So that's what made us decide to do print. And we don't ever want to not do print. It feels good. And we're so irreverent and everything. It's more in your face. It's literally in your face when you're holding physical media.
Well, it also has so many advantages over the internet. And for one thing, if you come to an ad, you can just turn the page. But on the internet, the ads are obtrusive and obnoxious, and it's sometimes almost impossible to get rid of them. I make a point of not supporting ads that cover the content I want to read. I understand that people have a right to monetize their programs, especially if they have a large reach. But it's up to the advertisers to find a way to advertise that isn't repellent. And I could give them some tips on that. If you just think about animation we just saw and comic book art, because people love that. But when you turn into a comic book news site like Bleeding Fool or Bounding into Comics, and you want to read the article, and these ads start coming in, one from the left, you get rid of it. Then there's one sinking down from the top, you get rid of that. Then there's one rising up from the bottom. All
Yeah.
they're doing is irritating people. And I'm
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
alone on that. I mean, I've had person after person say that's exactly right. I make note of the sponsor just so I can avoid them.
That's really interesting. I don't think I've ever had the thought to avoid that sponsor, but I'd like to say advertising doesn't work on me, but you never know. It's also so much of it is subliminal that I'm like, oh, I want a Wendy's cheeseburger now, even though
Well,
I've never
I
eaten at
have
Wendy's.
responded to ads on Facebook, paid ads. I order things I see. I ordered this neck device. Works great.
I s- I think I saw that on Facebook as well.
I have to say, it really works. It's a good device.
Oh, I was really interested to learn how you work with artists, being the writer, because that is the other thing. We we launched our magazine because we were fans of Mad and Cracked, and it's what we wanted to do to basically it. Right now, it seems just with all the cancellation and the wokeness and everything, it was time to be as irreverent as possible. So to like a phoenix bring back that comic satire rag to kind of push back on it all. That was our purpose, and we've never really been in the comics industry or anything, so that's part of the reason I started the Creative Chaos stream, is to bring people on like you and pick your brain on how do you guys do this.
I write full script now, but they're very terse. They're very descriptive, and people like my strips. Now I'm being surrounded by dogs here.
Nice. So it seems like you've made several illustrator friends and you just worked with them over and over.
I work with hundreds of artists all over the world. And some of them I've been working with for 40 years. Some are brand new. It's very exciting. And to see people say, "Who's your favorite artist?" Well, I couldn't name just one.
I would never ask. I would never ask because yeah, same thing with us in the 4 years that we've been doing Flip City Magazine. We love all of our artists, and we've we've finally come up with a format that we're sticking to, and one of our favorite not artists but what we lead our magazine with is our lead parody. So we always parody popular television or movies, and use the same artist, and he just kills it. He's very humorous visually, so we don't give a ton of, and this is why I wanted to ask you, as far as like how you direct artists. Is it mostly your writing is just so on point that they understand what you want, or are you giving them panel by panel?
I do it panel by panel. And it's important to give the artist the dialogue from Jump Street. The Marvel way is you write a brief description, then you hand it to the artist, and he draws it out however he wants. And then the writer would come in and fill in the word balloons according to what the artist has put. And sometimes that works when you have a brilliant artist like Jack Kirby. But to me, that's losing control of your work. Words are very important in comics. Not a lot of them. You have to be terse. You have to show, don't tell. We've all opened a comic book and seen 500 words caged in 8 or 9 boxes, cluttering up the artwork. And your first response is to groan and say, "This looks like work. I thought comics were fun," because you don't want to spend 15 minutes reading all this background and exposition. If you can show it, and that's the second most important rule of writing. The first rule is entertain. The second rule is show, don't tell. And that means that any information you can impart to the reader visually to advance the story without words, you should. But never do a wordless comic. They take 5 minutes to read and you forget them immediately. Words are important, so you have to make them count. And one way to make them count is to be original. So you never write, "I don't think we're in Kansas anymore." You never write, move it people. You never write, we have to talk. Those are all good sentiments, but you have to find a new way to say them.
The "we have to talk," I think I've heard in multiple movie scripts, and because I personally am not a writer, but you can just tell when something is not written well. My husband is a fantastic writer, and he's the one that writes probably 80% of our magazine. And I think he's fantastic. But yes, it's those kinds of things from a non-writer's perspective that makes you realize this is not written very well. But I don't know why, but it's exactly that. We have to talk.
Well, Sturgeon's Law says 90% of everything is crap. And he was right. Theodore Sturgeon was a great science fiction writer. And Sturgeon's Law certainly holds true throughout the arts. Applies to television, applies to movies, applies to novels, and it certainly applies to comic books. You don't want to be part of that 90%. You want to be the 10% that's really good.
Right. Now, when you're choosing visual entertainment like movies or television, are you what some would call a quote unquote hater?
No, not at all. I'm looking for anything that can entertain me. I just finished watching Maestro on Netflix. It's the story of Leonard Bernstein. It's brilliant. I loved it. And I recommend it highly. But, I've started a lot more movies and not watched them than I watch all the way through because most of them are crap.
I'm going to make a recommendation to you. Do you have Hulu?
Do I have
Are you
what?
on Hulu? HULU?
I don't think I get Hulu, but make the suggestion anyway,
Yeah.
because I have a way of finding the movies I want.
Okay. Well, this is actually a series, and they've done three. And I think it got canceled because of the writer's strike, but it's called The Great. And it is a satirical retelling of the rise of Catherine the Great. And it's satire and it's hilarious. I've watched the full series probably 4 times. And it's one of those things that they pack it so full of jokes. There's no way you're going to catch them all the first time. So it's just
Right?
so rewatchable. The Great. So it's probably my favorite thing that I've seen in the last, 12 months.
Sounds good. I'll look it up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take a look at the rest of your website, because I did want to look back at your past works, because I was curious about. Oh goodness, I can't remember the title right now. I'm just going to bring up your site. Here we go, and we'll go. All right. Is that Baron Books?
That's it.
Mike's Books. All right. Make this a little bit smaller. Because I feel like I remember something surrounding Private American. Were you canceled in some way?
Well, when we announced it, and I have to, first of all, Private American is what the Punisher would be doing today if he were written by somebody who knew what they were doing. And he's a veteran who lives in Texas, who sees chaos on his front door every day. And finally, he's had enough. And he knows the Border Patrol is overwhelmed. The police aren't doing anything. So he goes down to the border every night to rescue people traffickers. And that's where we first meet him, to stop the flow of drugs into the country and to stop the flow of terrorists into the country. And when that appeared, when we started the campaign, out of nowhere, the Daily Kos, a far left hate site, released an article that was headlined, Mike Barron releases another racist AF comic book. And it was written by a blue-haired woman who had her own comic funding on Kickstarter, who has never read anything I've written. And she urged people to call into Kickstarter and say, get this racist comic removed. And she succeeded. And Kickstarter complied with her demand, and so did a couple of other sites. And that's one reason Fund My Comic was created, not by me, but by a smart guy. But but the thing is, there's nothing racist in Private American. It was just a lie, just a vicious lie by these cancel pigs who lurk on the internet looking for people to attack. But because of that, our funding went up and up and up because most Americans don't like cancel pigs and they want to see what it was like. People who got the book are thrilled. It's a really good book. If you love the old Punisher, this is the book for you. This is what Punisher should be.
Yeah, and how long ago was that? Has that been a couple years now?
Maybe 18 months, because then we did Bronze Star. Bronze Star was the next one. That's a supernatural Western. There's nothing controversial about it, but all these books have received rapturous reviews.
Oh my gosh. So, as far as being cancel pigged, and this is before hashtag cancel pig, because that's a relatively new
That's right.
term.
That's right.
And in fact, that's going to be a small segment in a minute. So let's put a pin in cancel pig for just one moment, because I was curious about that, and I think that was how I had first ever heard of you, was because of the controversy. It just made you more popular. It
Same
doesn't.
thing happened with Thin Blue Line, which is about two police trying to survive a night of riots in a large Midwestern city. Out of the blue, people attacked us. This woman who wrote this article said it was about white cops going into black neighborhoods to kill as many black people as they could. Nothing could be further from the truth. The two protagonists in the comic, the two police officers, don't kill anyone. But that got picked up by Fox News. I was on Fox News to discuss it, about how people were trying to kill it before anyone could see it. And that helped our crowdfunding as well. Every time they attack us, we just grow stronger. But that's not my goal, to piss people off. My number one goal is to entertain. And these books are wildly entertaining. There's no preaching, there are no speeches, and no bumper stickers. It's pure drama, shot through
Right.
with flashes of humor, because even the darkest story has to have humor in it. Shakespeare understood that.
Right, absolutely. And well, and that when they first started coming at you out of the blue, not even knowing what they were talking about. I mean, I think now we can say it's all about the headline and the clicks and all that. It doesn't matter if it's false. So how did you handle it? I mean, were you shocked? Were you,
No, I was energized, and we got a lot of publicity. The National Association of Police Departments interviewed me. African American conservatives interviewed me. Police from all over the country started to reach out and tell me how happy they were that somebody was showing police in a good light. Now, listen, we know there are bad cops out there. It's not about them, although there is a shady cop in the story.
well, see, you didn't, you're writing true to life, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to write as realistically and as entertainingly as possible. And necessarily, you can't turn these people into saints. The protagonists have their flaws, but it is sympathetic to the police. And one of the reasons I wrote it is I know a number of police officers, and the cops I know join the force to be a positive force in their community. They're not bad guys. They're good people. They want to help people. They don't advertise it. They take a job where they can be of service to people.
Right. And it almost seems like there's a movement, part of like the defund the police and all the hate
Well, that's
thrown
what
at the
set me
police
off.
was defund police.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
so contrary to common sense and history. It blew my mind that elected politicians who'd sworn to uphold the Constitution were calling for defunding the police. Now, all these people now, these politicians, I read about them every day. The ones that voted to defund the police are asking for the police to give them special details to protect them, because the crime in their cities are out of control. And if you want to know what cities there are, we all know what cities there are. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York, St. Louis. What do all these cities have in common? Mac, what do you want, Mac? Mac wants
Well,
to be on camera.
is Mac? I'm happy to see Mac. I am a dog person.
Mac, you want to come back here? Mac. Nah, she's
No.
gone.
Oh well, she got shy at the last minute.
Right.
Okay, well, since we put a pin in cancel pigs, I'm so happy that you brought it up. Is because part one segment I want to have in my stream, and we're going to have a fun little graphic and animation eventually for this, but I love to be mansplained to, and I would love you to mansplain what cancel pigs is. What is it? Where'd it come from?
I'm not sure where that phrase came from. It may have been from John De La Rose, who's a friend of mine and a very successful writer who happens to be a devout Christian, and they've been after him for years. I've seen it appear on comics websites such as Bleeding Fool and Bounding Into Comics. It recently gained new notoriety because the cancel pigs are going after Mark Miller, one of the most successful comic book writers in history. Mark wrote a comic called Kick-Ass, which has been turned into 2 movies, and he's written a number of other projects that have been picked up by television and film. And he expressed alarm that the independent comic shops were going down the tubes. And one of the reasons they're going down the tubes is because the product that's offered by the big 2, by which I mean Marvel and DC, has become repellent. And there's nothing entertaining about it. They forgot rule number 1, which is it's their job to entertain. If you want to know what I mean, go to these sites like Bleeding Fool or Bounding Into Comics, and you can read about them. But I've been aware of what's been going on for years. And the problem is that editors no longer are interested in entertainment. They're interested in an agenda. And they hire people who have no experience writing, have no idea how to tell a story, but they have a big chip on their shoulder. So you look at these comics and they're trying to shove some kind of agenda down your throat.
Yeah, and you just said you've known about it for years. Now, is this just because you were seeing or feeling the change in temperature by being in the industry, or just
somewhat,
watching it all
partly by
unfold?
observation? Every now and then I'll buy a Marvel comic or a DC comic just to see how they're doing. Once it interests me, and I read them, and I'm just dumbfounded, because there's no entertainment value in them whatsoever. It's all this messaging. And usually the message is that the United States is a shit country, cops are evil, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, basically everything we see everywhere else in in society. It's pervaded our pop culture. I wonder because DC and Marvel and Disney and all the giant corporate entertainment franchises have made it very obvious that they hate at least 50% of their audience. I'm trying to figure out if all these companies changed their ways overnight and started telling good stories again. Do you believe there'd be forgiveness?
Well, yeah, there would be, but I don't see them changing direction. You mentioned Disney. Disney is probably the greatest example of an entertainment conglomerate that's lost its way.
Yeah, I mean, removing their things from their classic rides at Disneyland, for Pete's sake.
And encouraging grooming. And now, Disney employees have to wear a sign with their pronouns on their chests.
Oh, I didn't hear that one. I have seen the bearded men in princess costumes and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Of course, that new version of Snow White, the woman who played Snow White did such a terrific job bad-mouthing the original Snow White, which is the one movie which built Disney, that nobody went to see her movie.
Right.
Because, she says, she has this woman, a man wakes her up by kissing her without her consent. Oh, that's Sleeping Beauty. Excuse me. That's Sleeping Beauty. But that was another one
No,
that
she was
she.
talking about I don't need no man to save me.
That's right. Yeah, and it's not about it's a classic fairy tale. Uh, and if you can do a fairy tale, you have to respect the roots. You have to respect the story. When you revise everything, uh, people don't like it. It shows disrespect for the material. Now, if it were brilliant material, they would not show disrespect. But it's rarely brilliant material.
Right.
And if you want to know what
Absolutely.
brilliant material looks like, I will choose one example for you. The Equalizer, starring Denzel Washington, is exactly what The Punisher should be today. Nobody can compare to those movies. I think they're the most brilliant and intelligent action films of the last 15 years.
It and I don't think I've ever seen that. The Equalizer. Well, I don't watch a lot of movies. But is that a newer movie with Denzel Washington?
Well, the one that came out this year is Equalizer 3. It's brand new. Equalizer 1 came out about 15 years ago. And it's brilliant. I can't recommend it too highly. And now the same team is going to do Hannibal with Denzel as Hannibal. And a lot of people are screaming, Hannibal was a white man. Well, I mean, there's jury's out on that, but I'll watch it because these people have earned my respect.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm glad you that there is still some entertainment out there that we can all
Oh,
enjoy.
I could name a whole bunch of movies that are brilliant that came out recently. One is called Let Him Go, starring Kevin Costner and Diane Lane as two ranchers in Montana whose daughter-in-law, her husband dies in a horse accident, and she remarries into a clan of scumbags. And one day they're in town and they see the daughter-in-law with her new husband. First he shoves her, and then he shoves the 6-year-old boy. So Costner knows, I have to get this child back from them. And he tracks him down to North Dakota, and it's this family of creeps living out off the grid. It takes place in the 60s. That's one. Another one is Nefarious, which just came out this year. It's a brilliant movie. It's basically a two-man play about a psychiatrist interviewing a death row inmate on the day of his execution. And the death row inmate claims to be Satan himself. And the tension is palpable. It's all done with words too. I mean, there's no violence in it, but it's just fascinating. Those are two movies. I could go on and on. They're great movies everywhere if you know where to look.
Well, I'm glad that is happening. Yeah, and Mike, if you do end up grabbing a Flip City or two, I would be so happy if you'd give us a quote or feedback.
I would love to.
Okay,
I'll talk about that tomorrow.
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That sounds great to me. Hey,
right. Come here, you little shit. Oh no, now she's ready.
Oh wait, do we get a dog? We get a dog visit. Hold on. Let's see. Look at
That's
that
Mac.
cutie.
That's Freddie.
Oh, they're almost exactly the same size. That's your acting coach.
Freddie.
I recognized your acting coach, and you are so lucky to have such a sweet sounding wife. I bet. Do you just make her laugh all the time?
I try.
Yeah, I'm telling you, because that's my husband and me. Is he's a very quiet man. You have to get to know him to get his full personality. And so I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people in the world to be able to know him completely and be entertained by him nonstop. And he's constantly doing so many gags that sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other because I'm doing other stuff. And he's like, "Hey, honey, did you hear that? Did you hear that?" Because he wants me to laugh.
Thank you for having me on, Christy.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. And for my second Creative Chaos stream, I don't think we did too bad.
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. We will be in touch, and
Okay.
I hope one day you'll come back and talk to me again.
I'd be delighted.
All right. Bye now.